It's time to get into our hot takes. This is where you, the subscribers, send us your Formula One hot takes and we rate how spicy they are. We've got a very special guest, Blake Dalton, Ponden, you may know him as. So, let's get into the first hot take. This is from Holly's Thobbits, and she says that Danny Rick will be gone before the summer break.
Well, it's already been rumoured, hasn't it, that he's been given till China to big up his performances, and otherwise he will be out, which I think is way too soon. But I think it's, at the moment, you wouldn't say no to that. I mean, they got rid of Nick de Vries when he wasn't performing to Yuki Tsunoda. Daniel Ricciardo's a bit better, but I wouldn't say, is beating Yuki Tsunoda or even really matching him. So, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, obviously keep in mind it's just a rumour at the end of the day. But, I mean, Daniel has... The direction the car's changed and he just doesn't seem to be suiting it. It's only been 3 races now. I mean, he had half a season to prove himself. I personally thought he proved himself to get another year. So then to be dropped after 5 races, I think that's really harsh. But again, De Vries was brought in. You've got a job to do. He couldn't achieve it, so he was dropped. And Daniel's been brought in, obviously with the more marketing power as well. You've got this job to do of deliver points and bring in sponsors for the team. And if you can't deliver the points, then maybe that's something they'll look at. You've got Liam Lawson ready. I mean, Liam's even been very vocal recently, which was surprising to me, about how he's waiting for Daniel's seat or waiting for a seat. And I was like, okay, Liam,
I'm waiting to see him now in the garage. He's just stood behind him and he gets in the car and be like, you better perform, otherwise that's mine.
Yeah. He's whispering in his ear just you wait.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I think it will be quite harsh. But then again, they've done it with De Vries, they've done it with all their drivers, so you got to treat Daniel the same, even if he's got more marketing power.
I don't know how spicy this hot take is really, because it's the philosophy of Red Bull and the affiliated teams to swap in, swap out. So I don't think it's super unrealistic spicy, for this to happen.
I'd say because there's a lot of Ricciardo fans, there's a big Ricciardo fan base, and a lot of them would disagree. But at the end of the day, I agree. He's in a terrible car. The car is not great.
Yeah.
It's a back marker, and the race pace, at least from the first 2 races, didn't look great. Yuki did a good job in Australia. But the one thing you have to do, if you're in a back marker team, the one job is beat your teammate. And if you're not beating your teammate, you're not doing good enough. Because that's the only thing you can be compared against when you're down there and scoring 0 points. And he's not.
Do you think that if there's a space in another team that anyone else would snatch him up?
Yeah, I think
you do think that's possible.
I think for Daniel's own interest, I think it's, if he was to be dropped mid-season, I think that's going to be better than getting dropped at the end of the season, because he has all year for all the other teams that are doing the whole silly season.
What are we rating this hot take then? From 1 to 5, what would you give it?
I go with a 3. I think it's medium.
I agree with
that. I think the Daniel Ricciardo fans would not like it, which is fair. It's understandable. But I also think everyone's thinking it at the same time.
I was going to say I'd give it a 2 just because Liam's already proven himself. And if Liam got the seat, I don't think it's as a surprise as putting in, Liam at when he came in, or if there was another junior waiting around. So I think it's there's proof in the pudding.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say around a 2, because you can debate it a little bit, but I think we all think potentially it's going to happen. So 2 and a 3, we'll go with that one. Okay, the next hot take is from Randy Dunning Jr. and they say George needs to calm down with trying to pass. He wrecks himself and goes tunnel vision. Now, I think that is quite a spicy one, because poor George. What do you think?
I disagree. Because I put it in the same boat as Max Verstappen in his early Red Bull career.
Okay.
Very aggressive, very fast driver. Made the odd mistake with overtaking drivers and sometimes resulted in a shunt. Then he had to go through a few years of the car being absolutely terrible in terms of reliability. But I do think that, drivers go through that. They need that time. You don't learn unless you make mistakes.
Do you not think that George has had enough time, though, to make his mistakes?
I don't think so.
It's not as if he's 1-2 years in the sport.
Yeah, but he's still a young driver. I think the mindset of people when they think about drivers now has changed massively, because I think we're seeing a lot more younger drivers come in. I mean, Lewis Hamilton was one of the youngest when he came in, but he was still a lot older than the younger drivers that we have coming in now.
Yeah.
So I think people look at it and go, oh, well, you've had 4 seasons in the sport. You should be at this level. but age is still something that needs to be brought into it too. So I think allow these mistakes to happen and we'll get a better driver from it.
Do you agree, Blake?
I disagree with Haydon, so I agree with the prompt. I've always defended Leclerc with the mistakes thing. I would prefer to see a driver pushing and be good 20 out of 24 races and make four races they just chuck it in the wall because they're on it every single time. And I think George is one of those drivers who is really talented, but he makes those mistakes. But I do disagree. I saw someone on Twitter say, like, I've never seen a driver be putting the pressure on and they crumble under their own pressure. And it's like, that's always been the case. Look at Canada. He was chasing down the leaders, crashed. Singapore, chasing down the leaders, crashed. Chasing down Alonso in Australia, crashed. He's crashing from his own kind of like, I don't know, over-eager. Is that the word? Over-eagerness?
I think he gets a bit overconfident at times, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think he does need to calm it down because, I mean, that's a lot of points being thrown away. But I do think there is the argument, obviously, like, he's still new to that experience at driving at the front. And personally, I don't expect him to be beating Lewis because of that, because he's got so much learning to do at the front. And I think it's showing now when he has had those opportunities, he is chucking it away.
I think this person, Randy Dunning Jr., is onto something. I think he gets way too overconfident, and that's where you see the mistakes. But I think I'd give that hot take, I'm saying a 4. I think that's quite spicy because I think everyone will have different opinions, like we can see.
Yeah, I think I can agree with a 4. I think if you look back on his career, Williams wasn't really something that he can really be judged against because you've not really got a teammate to learn from. Kubica was not the Kubica that he was. And Latifi was not an exceptional driver like Lewis is.
If he just didn't crash, everyone, I think a lot of people I should say, would be gassing him up and like, oh my God, you're beating Lewis. But these little mistakes that he does do then makes people be like, oh, he's nowhere near Lewis. So he's actually very consistent, having a great season. So if he just stops those mistakes, I think there is an argument that he's outperforming Lewis.
What are you giving it, Blake?
Yeah, I'd say, like you said, I think giving it a 4 because it is something that a lot of people will agree and disagree on. But yeah, I think... Yeah.
It's a 4. The next hot take is from Don Corello, and they say most of Alonso's so-called wily actions are just dirty driving. I think that's super spicy as well because Alonso is known for his aggressive driving. Now, obviously, we've seen it. It's getting called potentially dangerous. And I think he can find himself in dangerous situations because he will push that driver behind to its limit. Even when he tries to overtake, he's on the ball, isn't it? He's going to push it to the maximum he can. And, you know, if the other driver or even himself isn't completely in the zone, that is the perfect opportunity to make a very dangerous mistake.
I've seen you on the sim. You're a bit of a dirty driver. What's your opinion on this?
I don't think he's dirty. I think every sport you've got to, especially Formula 1, you've got to maximize everything. And I think Alonso's so good at knowing where the line is and teetering on it. I mean, I think we spoke about it earlier, like with the Australian Grand Prix penalty. He probably didn't deserve it, but there's, you know, you could say here or there. But you've got to do that. If you're just sitting there being like, oh, well, I'm just going to let this guy pass me, or I'm just going to not bother to overtake. You know, there are drivers on the grid who are very careful. That is why they're as good and consistent as they are. But think about the amount of missed opportunities they've missed out on. Whereas like Alonso's always trying to get the best result he can. And to do that, you've got to push the limits. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say it's dirty. I think it's just using his ability. And I mean, to me, I've not seen him do anything wrong in recent years, so I wouldn't say it's dirty.
It's not cheating. It's not breaking the rules. As an athlete, as a top performing athlete, it's not just your job to be good at the sport you're doing. You have to also kind of do your research, look into it, and look at the rule book and go, okay, where can I push the line?
You brought up a really good point with Alonso and like looking at the rules. One that comes to my mind is one of the Russian Grand Prix. I can't remember which year, and the ruling was there was no ruling about going off track on the first lap. FIA were really.
As long as you went around the bollard, it was fine.
They were really delicate about first lap will let you off. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go off. He just avoided all the carnage. Went through.
I think he did actually overtake someone. I think he did actually make an overtake because of it. But nothing happened because.
Because then
as you said, he tried it. He read the rules. Like, well, this is allowed. So
and he even asked in the briefing. He's like, so can we go around the bollard? They're like, yeah. So he's like, I'm going to do it. And people are like, oh, that's so unfair. It's like, well, is it unfair? Because he was allowed to.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's dirty driving. So I'm going to give that hot take. I'm going to give it a 2. Because I think it is quite spicy, but after we've chatted about it, I'm looking at it from a completely different angle.
It's a 1. It's just picking at little things. I think it's taking the penalty that I think was very harsh out of context. And I think if we took away all these things that drivers were allowed to do of like a little bit of tactics, we'd have an even more boring sport.
Okay, Blake, what would you rate that hot take?
I'd probably give it a 1 or 2 as well. I think it's part of the sport and sport in general, and you just always want to see drivers pushing to the limits, and otherwise, like you said, it just gets boring. And, you know, as long as it's not dangerous, the sport's always going to be dangerous to a degree, and as long as they're not going over that line, then it's fine.
So not super spicy. Thank you so much for sending us your hot takes. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of the Aussie GP, and don't forget to send us some more hot takes.